is now the right time for a podcast like this?
Here's what I do know. I think there's an opportunity in front of us.
Cries has always driven our business. We measure everything.
And our leaders to lead by example.
Almost all crisis creates not just immediate anxiety, but financial.
We need to expand the product to be the overall experience.
Ensure that our industry is marketed well.
And in order for that tool to work better for me, I better hope.
Always got to start with the end in mind, right? You can't start at the start. You got to start at the end.
Your company's culture aren't words on your website. It's how employees feel on a Sunday night.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Crave, the IFDA podcast. As we step into 2026, I want to do something a little different for today. I want to do a recap of 2025. Here's what we did together in 2025. What a great year and what a privilege for me to be representing us, the IFDA community. I had 12 conversations with industry and non-industry leaders. I did a session myself based on learnings that I experienced throughout the year working with DSMs, DSRs. So this one was all about sales strategies. We did 2 live podcasts at the IFDA Smart Conference in Miami. And then we were live on the floor in Columbus at the IFDA Solutions Conference. So I've packaged this with 10 insights that most of these insights came from you. I received LinkedIn's, DMs, through social, Insta, where people would say, hey, Julien, I really like that insight, and here's how I've applied it to my business. Or you forced me down a rabbit hole. So I'm going to share these insights, and what I'm then going to do after each insight is I'm going to challenge you with a question or provocation so that we can apply these learnings. So if you're listening to this at your desk or over coffee, you might want to grab a pen and a piece of paper and play along with me. If you're listening to this in the car, well, as soon as you park that car, you might want to go in and write a few of the important facts that really hit home for you so that you can go apply these. So with that said, let's get going here. And I thought I would start with mindset. There was a common theme as I interviewed all our leaders in the industry. And as we know, I always knew there was a lot of moving pieces, but after talking to so many great leaders throughout the year, what I realized is, wow, this is truly a 24/7 business. A lot of things can go wrong in order for it I guess, let me put a positive spin on it. There's a lot of things that go right in order to serve the people that are the beneficiaries in the restaurant at the end. So the mindset, if I were to bucket it, I'm going to go way back here and go down in memory lane. All of you probably read Good to Great at one point from Jim Collins. If you haven't, honestly, the learnings are probably more important today than they've ever been. And in his book, he talked about the Stockdale paradox in the chapter on Confront the Brutal Facts. And what he challenged us as leaders, and it was based on a conversation with Admiral Jim Stockdale, where he was a prisoner of war, and he talked about what he saw with the various experiences of people that were prisoners of war. And he said, ultimately, there was one mindset that did better than others. So you had the mindset that obviously were in despair, they had lost faith, they had no belief, so they didn't do well. The second mindset, which I put myself in that bucket sometimes. I don't know if you fit this, but sometimes I'm a bit too optimistic and not grounded in reality. So it was the folks that were optimistic but too optimistic, they didn't do well. So for instance, if their hope was that they were going to leave these camps, these prison camps by December or Easter or whatever milestone they had put in their head, or 4th of July, it didn't go well. The ones that did really well were the ones that had unwavering faith that they will prevail in the end. They won't quit. They won't spiral out of control. They won't lose their identity. They're going to play the long game. But they face the brutal reality, he called it brutal realism of, hey, we might be here for 3 years. There might be a lot of suffering before we get out of here. Those are the people that did better. And I must say, I'm going to oversimplify here and maybe generalize, but if I were to listen back to all these podcasts, which by the way, I did, and for those of you that listen to your own voice, it is very difficult to do, but in the spirit of serving you better, my IFDA community, I wanted to listen to each episode so I could glean some of these insights and look for opportunities to improve to better serve you this year. But ultimately, it was about having this Stockdale paradox understood. All our leaders in industry understand that it is important to face brutal facts. It is important to be grounded in reality. It's important to understand all the challenges that, whether it's legislation, labor, tariffs, whatever those things might be to challenge our business models, we need to understand that. And then we have to be unwavering in our faith and belief in why we do what we do. And that's a good jump off point for first insight. We kicked off Crave, the IFDA podcast, with a conversation between Mark Allen, our fearless CEO of IFDA, and I to talk about the mission that we were on with this podcast, which was ultimately to help people with their leadership confidence, to try to find some fresh leadership insights to help people just be 1% better. And ultimately, to help people work on the business versus being in the business. Because as we know, there's a lot of reasons why we get sucked into the tactical side of things when sometimes we need to pull ourselves out, irrelevant of what hat you wear in the value chain of food service distribution, to really look at where are we going? What's around the corner? How are we investing in technology? How are we investing in our people? Are our teams really connected with our why? One of the things that Mark and I riffed on was this notion of having a rally cry, where if I were to interview anybody in your business, so imagine you work for distributor X or manufacturer Y, and I would ask any team member, irrelevant of what seat they sit in, what is it that you're driving towards? When I open the door, what are we all charging towards? What does success look like for us in 2026? What would the answer be? Would you be comfortable with that? So my first provocation is if you open the door, so you're a sales leader, you're a marketing leader, you're leading ops, you're finance, would your team be singing off the same songbook? So when I open the door, are they charging in the same direction? That's insight number one. We had a lot of conversations around collaboration, whether that's internal amongst the various functions or externally, so let's call that partnership. And one of the problems / opportunity that was identified is, I'm going to use the word clarity. Is it crystal clear amongst the various functions, for instance, on your team, what success looks like? A little bit actually playing off of what I just mentioned. If I open the door, is it clear what we're all driving towards? Well, how would that extend outside your team? How would that extend outside your building? How would that extend to the people that you're selling on a daily basis? There's a concept called retellability. Ultimately, you might have your elevator pitch on why I should choose to do business for you, for instance. So imagine you're the distributor and you're calling on operators and you're selling the why you versus other distributors. You might be confident in the elevator pitch that you would use, the 3 attributes to describe what it is you do, why they should pick you, your track record of success, whatever you choose to elevate. But how confident would you be in your team's elevator pitch? One of the things around collaboration is, imagine if once a month you had a meeting within your business. Maybe you invite some of your business partners, to talk about what is a problem that we could solve together to have serious impact, to go grab a quick win. How could we, instead of just challenging the status quo, break down the status quo together? So that was my second insight around collaboration, as it all comes back to clarity. Thirdly, again, these themes wandered through all the conversations, whether those were some of the conversations that we had in Columbus on the floor, whether that was what took place at the IFDA Smart conference in Miami, or in every single conversation that I had with our fearless industry leaders and our non-industry leaders that support this great ecosystem, was around trust. And I love how someone said, trust scales faster than strategy. Another way to put this, I'll use a buzzword we've all heard quite a bit over the last few years, is this term called psychological safety that came out of the famous study that Google did at one point. I guess it's probably already 15 years ago, looking at high-performance teams. And ultimately, the most high-performing teams within Google, so they studied a bunch of teams, is they had psychological safety where people could be the best version of themselves. They could challenge each other without repercussions. Ultimately, they could fail, as long as there were some learnings that came back to the business. So I'm going to challenge you. Did you create a culture where people feel safe to challenge? Because if you haven't, well, you're never going to have that trust level that you need. And there's a great book from Patrick Lencioni called The 5 Dysfunctions of Team that was referenced a couple of times, not necessarily on air, but what I love about these podcasts is we always do a prep call and then we stay on a few minutes after. And I always ask people, what are some of the books that inspired you? And 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is one that was referenced multiple times by Patrick Lencioni. And in the 5 dysfunctions were the areas that he says that ultimately, if you want a high-performing team, you need to have trust and you need to have healthy conflict. So the only way to do that is you need psychological safety. Another big insight or bucket that I'd like to share a few insights on is the importance of walking a mile in someone else's shoes. What I constantly heard, whether it was directly from the CEO that I was having the conversation with, or people that I encountered in my travels throughout the year, is people that found a way to excel, that are going to keep excelling in 2026, is that they're not just good at the role they do. They truly understand their whole value chain. They understand everything from how the order comes in, or from click to brick, if you want, from how people experience even their website, all the way to how they receive the product, how they're supported, how they're billed, how they receive it. They have relationships with the truck driver that drops off the products. So ultimately, how well do you understand your business? And, I'm going to use the Disney example. If they get their Imagineers, that's their marketers, their salespeople, their engineers, to still walk around the park, on their knees, shuffling down Main Street, USA in Orlando, wearing knee pads so that they can understand the part from the vantage point of the 5-year-old, what are you doing to truly understand your value chain and then your customer's value chain or your partner's value chain? Do you really understand it to the level that you should? So understanding. I'm going to call this one, this bucket could be culture, could be creating an environment where people thrive, where they can become the best version of themselves. But it was this whole notion of make Mondays not miserable. So ultimately, create a culture that, yes, of course, people still want to have that extended weekend because they love being with their family, friends, enjoying their activities, their sports, their leisure, their hobbies, the arts. But ultimately, they look forward to coming in on Monday. They look forward to the people they work with. They look forward to the challenge at hand. They look forward to finding solutions and just collaborating to have more impact. So again, there's a good challenge. Let's make sure Mondays don't suck. Here's another bucket. One of the questions I asked all the leaders is, did you have a mentor? Did you have a TED Talk? I shared with people a few times that Ted Lasso is my mentor. He doesn't know it. He's a fictional character, but I love how Ted Lasso looks at leadership in many ways. Not to say he's perfect. As we saw, if you've watched Ted Lasso, there were some challenges as a leader, but ultimately there was extreme empathy. He really took time to understand the humanity in people while still looking for excellence. And I love that a lot of the books that were referenced were not new books. It's almost like what's old is new again as we're trying to make sense of this convergence between AI and humanity. And in Stephen Covey's famous book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the 7th habit is start with the end in mind first. So start with the end first and then reverse engineer it. And I can tell you that I received a lot of back and forth on this one, which was, Julien, I think I need to do a better job of painting a vivid picture of what the end result's going to look like for the project so that there's clarity, there's that big word clarity again, around what we're trying to accomplish, and then we can reverse engineer it. Do we have the right people, the right process, the right technology, the right metrics in order to make that a reality? So here's my challenge to you, my listeners. Did you paint a vivid picture of what you're driving towards so that you can reverse engineer it and make sure that you've got everything necessary to accomplish it? Experience, experience, experience. The big word. If I were to use words that jumped out probably throughout the year the most, the word experience. And we even had a gentleman that had worked with Disney, Dennis Snow, that talked about experience. And he said, ultimately, experience is your brand. And of course, he shared first of all, you got to listen to the podcast, so many great insights. But what I love was we had a back and forth around when things go off the rail, when things aren't being delivered in a manner that was probably sold or promised or that you hoped, that's the opportunity to really build trust with the other side. Ultimately, that's the experience. We're all good when things are great. And look, I'm not saying that we want to design faults in your experience, but I can tell you that if we want to level up when something happens, we're going through a tough patch of shorting someone, we're having problems with logistics, we could have a laundry list here, friends. Did you view that as an opportunity to enhance your brand and really, build that trust? I'll just give you one example. If I led a strategy session, I would take all the work, dump it in ChatGPT and say, hey, I would put the name of one of my favorite strategists. For instance, I love the book Play to Win. If they analyze this plan, if they put it together, how would they piece it together? And what's amazing is I'll probably land on 20, 30% of what comes back. Consistency will beat motivation every day. We talked a lot about habits. And look, if I look at my pen here, funny enough, it's a James Clear pen. And what it says is you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. So here's a call out. How good are your systems? How good are your habits? This is a fun one. I heard this the other day. If we were to produce a movie on you, on your life, what would you cringe looking at? What would you be proud of? So this would include everything from how you wake up, how you go to bed, what you do in between. So with that said, how good are your habits? Let's see some of the patterns as I look back at the year in review. Here are some of the patterns that came out time and time again. Pattern 1, collaboration isn't soft. It's a growth strategy. If you want speed, if you want to kind of go faster and have more impact, you need alignment, you need clarity, and it might take a bit more time to create those conditions and the environment, and you will get rewarded for it. So that would be pattern number 1. Pattern number 2, culture is built through standards, not slogans. We talked a lot about values throughout the year as well in conversations. How do we have values that aren't just on a wall, but they guide everything we do? Let's call that values in action. And having 7 values that no one understands or no one can see themselves in, that's probably not values. I mentioned that I heard a great interview with Steve Kerr, the coach of the Golden State Warriors, and he said that he has one big value, and it's the value of joy. He says, all my NBA superstars probably had a lot of joy when they were kids playing the sport. And then along the way, got stripped out of the way because agents, money, metrics, whatever it might be. So he says, what I try to do is bring joy back in the dressing room, joy back on the practice floor, joy during games. So if there's last shot of the game, let's create some joy. Let's have a good chuckle here before we go and take a shot at winning the game. So ultimately, how good are your values, and are they really guiding and shaping how you do business? I just mentioned systems. I mentioned habits. We talked a lot about the importance of listening to understand, listening with empathy, listening aggressively throughout the year. And I believe this more than ever. You get the answers you deserve. And ultimately, I forget, it's Peter Drucker that said, it's funny, I've quoted Peter Drucker twice now in this episode, but he said, there's nothing worse in business than having the right answer to the wrong questions, because all your energy, efforts, and resources go in the wrong area. Our job as leaders is to make sure that we help people embrace change. We know that change is hard for most. We also know that when it's well explained, when we have the right systems in place, we've created the environment, there's trust, you've got the right culture and values, you can do amazing things as change leaders. So here's my challenge for all of you as we enter 2026. I've come at you with a lot here. My hope is that at least one thing was a reminder. Maybe it was from one of the episodes that you've heard that you're going to go back and revisit. Maybe this is your first time listening to Crave, and it'll be enough to say, hey, I'm going to invest some time and put this on my rotation this year so I can grow and learn from other great leaders that are experiencing the same challenges and excited for the same opportunities that you might be facing as a listener here. So choose one thing from today. Write it down in the spirit of 1% better every day. Atomic Habits, of course. That book was mentioned multiple times. If you haven't read it, highly recommend you add that to your rotation this year. If Crave was a tool that helped you grow as a leader, don't be afraid to share it. Let's keep building this community. I'm super excited for what's in store for 2026. We're going to have phenomenal guests. I want to thank you sincerely for investing the time, energy, effort, and let's make 2026 a fantastic year, and go get them.